Hey everybody, Amanda Russo here with Keller Williams Collective, and today I'm so happy to have Jenny Hulesman, the principal and wealth advisor with Cerity Partners, here with me today. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Amanda. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. So, I want to talk to you a little bit today about retirement planning, which is something that is a hot topic, I think, for everybody, and get into more planning for the future and beyond those retirement stages. But first, let's talk a little bit about you and tell everybody kind of what you do and how you landed at where you are today.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me and appreciate the topic. Retirement readiness is a huge topic that we deal with all the time professionally. To get that out of the way, I am a certified financial planner, registered Social Security analyst, and certified senior advisor, a designation I also share with Amanda and how we were able to connect. That said, our team really helps guide many, many clients. So I completely respect the fact that I'm sitting here at 40 years old. I have not retired. However, we have coached hundreds of people through retirement and the decisions that come about with that. So very prepared to have this conversation and excited to have it and see how it can correlate into the real estate industry as well.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm going to ask you probably a very loaded question.
Bring it on.
But people that are in that 55 to maybe 65, people are working longer and we know that, I guess, nowadays. But what are you seeing in that age group? Are they prepared as the cost of living increases and, aging, as we know, as certified senior advisors gets more expensive as we move forward? So people that are moving into that segment of life, are they prepared for that retirement stage?
So I'm going to start with everyone being different. And this is not specific advice to any one individual that's listening today. But generally speaking, we're seeing it across the board. We got the people that are super prepared and can always use that second opinion because it's hard to not be biased with your own information, your own self. However, there's a lot of people that say, you know what, I'm just going to wait until a couple months before. And I would say that is probably one of the biggest mistakes because one, you need to, take finances out of it. You've got to mentally practice retirement before you can successfully transition. Financial is one piece of the equation.
So what do you mean by mentally practice retirement?
Yeah. So you think about a corporate executive who has been, in the hot seat, right, if you will, for years upon years upon years. And all of a sudden they think, oh, I just want to golf more, or I want to go travel more, insert your hobby there. And all of a sudden everything comes to a screeching halt. Maybe that's fun for a year, maybe 2 years, but then we tend to see the boomerang, right? They're like, well, maybe I should consult. Maybe I need to go back and visit my friends at, ABC Corporation. And that's where I think the mental preparedness is almost more important than the financial preparedness. You need both. Don't get me wrong. You need both. You can't not have the finances to be able to support your hobbies, but it is very important. Or you end up with so many, honey-do lists on your home or anything else that, you wear yourself out and you realize, well, there's no additional things I can possibly do here. Right.
Yeah.
So,
And I, as a certified, senior advisor and planner as far as real estate goes, like when we talk about the house and getting into hobbies and things like that, as we are settling down past the work stage, I always talk to my clients about using their home as a tool, kind of removing that emotional piece out of it. Yes, it's the home that we raised our kids in potentially. And we probably lived here for quite some time, but using that as a tool to do those other things, like maybe the golfing or their traveling or whatever hobby it might be. So do you see the home at that part in their life? Do you see the home come up in those conversations, or should it be as a part of that retirement strategy?
I would say absolutely, and it can come in a few different ways. So, for those that have substantial savings, sometimes it's a matter of lifestyle choices. Do you want to be able to shut the door, lock it, and not worry about anything else? Not worry about if there's a big rainstorm, if your basement's flooding, not worry about any of those other pieces. Other factors could include, I would say the saddest and happiest, right, story, because it has a happy ending we had is there was a client who decided to build their dream vacation home, right? Really wanted the whole family to come and just decided that the whole family would come, right? So they were going to sell their primary home, have this beautiful home on the beach, have their clients come to, or have their clients, have their kids and grandkids come. Well, the kids had no interest.
Oh,
So it became an issue because it was not a conversation in advance of
yeah.
that. It wasn't, again, a financial problem. It becomes a lifestyle problem, an expectations problem. So I would say having those conversations with all of the people that really matter to you is super important. Of course, your spouse or anyone that lives with you, then also the children. Maybe that home holds a lot of value, memories to them. So is that something that needs to be considered from estate planning perspective, right? Does this need to be put inside of a trust or something else so that way it can be passed on efficiently to other family members? Or is it something that nobody cares about and you're holding on to it and there's really no reason?
Yeah. I talk about that a lot where we've lived in this home and it's, there's that emotional attachment and they're saying, oh, well, I was going to leave this to my son or my daughter or my grandkids. Well, many times they don't, they don't want it. Like you said, there's no interest and they certainly don't want the stuff that's in it. So having those conversations, I think is hard, but it is important to set that expectation up front. So you're not, having these expectations of people are going to come and share this beautiful vacation home
Absolutely.
and those dreams just don't come to fruition for everybody else. So that's a good point. Or even using it, I think, too, as maybe a passive income stream.
Hmm.
Looking at a property like that is something that they could enjoy when they had the time or their family had interest, but possibly using it for something like that as well.
Absolutely. And I would say as long as the payments are not a financial burden, right? It can be incorporated into the budget and the financial plan. Having access to that home equity can be a tool to be used at the right time, depending on what the client's goals are and what it is that they're looking to do. Maybe it's purchasing that second home. Maybe it's not having to move twice. Being able to tap that equity to be able to put that down payment on wherever it is they're going next, right?
Yeah.
So it absolutely can be a tool, especially given the ever-changing interest rates that we are exposed to. So when it's the right time, it can be a tool. When it's not the right time, it needs to be known. So it's not just a blanket statement of like, yes, always use this.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to kind of beyond the retirement. So people that are more late 60s, early 70s, maybe we're talking about kind of looking forward about, aging in place or looking at healthcare needs or things that are evolving in their life. What kind of questions when you get into this and maybe you've emotionally and prepared yourself and we're settling into what retirement is and thinking ahead. So what kind of conversations or questions at that point in life should we be asking our advisors or checking in with them to make sure that we are still appropriately moving forward?
Yeah. And this is probably one of my favorite ages because I would say a lot of times this is when we have, to your point, settled into retirement. We're feeling good. Everything's not a new decision, but we're starting to think down the road. And typically, health is still with us, right? We're not at the point of things being a critical decision. So I think the conversation of are you prepared for the next steps? Do you have that long-term care preparedness plan? Perhaps you want to move in with your kids and they say, absolutely not. Right? No. So having that while you're still of sound mind, good, physical health, where you're not making a decision at a critical time where a decision must be met, right? You've got the time and the space to breathe. You got the time and the space to go visit, whether it be nursing homes, assisted living, or that house down the street from your daughter or son that you're considering.
Mm-hmm.
Having that time to, again, think about it, look at it, and then plan on paper, how does this impact me financially? Whether I keep my home, sell my home, rent my home out, right? What do we need to do? Because once you do it as financial advisors, all we can say is congratulations. I hope it works out for you.
Right.
But before you do it, if you can bring us into that conversation, we're able to help you model that out and truly look at those cash flows and how it impacts you from an overall wealth standpoint. So that way it can correlate back to your goals of either, living closer to your kids, grandkids, moving into assisted living, anything else. And I think that's really hard and emotionally difficult to make those decisions when it is a must-do time frame, right?
Right.
If your spouse has, critical Alzheimer's or sundowners and is, unable to be safe in the home, that's a decision that has to be made right now. We are in a moment of crisis.
Right. And you can't make good decisions
It's so
when you're in a moment of crisis.
so
And
hard.
and two, talking about a lot of these houses that I see, these clients live in, they're typically older homes. They come with lots of maintenance, or maybe, the bedrooms are upstairs, or there's
Mhm.
the laundry's in the basement, things like that. But just from like just a maintenance and an upkeep of this type of lifestyle,
Sure.
is that something that they should be talking about? How is this going to affect my income or the money that I'm expenditure down the road? Does it make sense to look at more of a low maintenance style living? And it could be like a patio home, right?
Sure.
Not everybody at
Really
this
popular.
Yeah, not everybody at that point in their life is thinking assisted living or things like that, but making sure that maintaining whatever this home is still is going to fit into that financial picture.
Absolutely. I mean, it either needs to be a point where we are going to give ourselves permission to pay for those services, right?
Mhm.
We're not at 75 years old. It is unlikely that your family members and loved ones want you to go and climb that 20-foot tree to trim those branches.
Right.
I cannot, I mean, I wouldn't want my dad to do that.
Right.
He's in his 60s. So we either have to give ourselves the permission to spend that. And I would say that that is a large barrier is people who have traditionally been do-it-yourselfers really struggle to pay for that cleaning lady, pay for that or man,
Yeah.
the additional lawn service or the additional things that are needed. So either giving yourself that permission and ensuring it fits in your budget,
Mhm.
or to your point, make the decision that, hey, maybe this isn't the right size home and maintenance and responsibilities that I want at this stage of my life. And that is not giving up. That's not, throwing in the towel and saying, hey, I'm too old to do this. That's giving yourself permission to continue to live the life that you want, prioritizing the things you want.
Mhm.
If you
In a
enjoy
safe way.
gardening, yeah, in a safe way. If you enjoy gardening, awesome. Patio homes can have smaller square footages.
Yeah.
You can go and do part of a garden share, anything like that. It doesn't prevent you from doing it. It just might mean looking at it in a different light.
Right. And I hear a lot of times too, like we talked about the house, but just being able to leave something. And we're all about, building wealth and generational wealth and having that for your family. Are you having a lot of conversations like that? Sometimes I feel like when people are saying, well, I want to be able to leave stuff to my kids or my grandkids, that's a wonderful plan. And we all love that. But it could be to their own detriment at some point. So when do they need to start having those conversations to make sure that if we want to do that, this is how we do it? And then when we start preparing, but at some point that might not be the best choice because we have to take care of ourselves too. And people are living longer, so you've got to have more. You've got to have more put back for those types of scenarios.
You got it. So there's a couple things we look at, and I'm going to get a little bit into the minutia on the finances here. So again, not specific to anyone. This is just an example. So people will say, I really want to leave something to the kids. I really want to leave something to the kids. Think about from the kids' perspective. If you sold your home and that allowed you to have the financial wherewithal to pay for the care you need in a safe way, whether that means you downsized and you had caregivers come in because that was something that was needed for you, whether that means, it was less of a quote burden onto the children to come in and take care of you, right? Or your home. Think of it from that perspective because when you access that equity, that still is the exact same equity that you would have had if you left it to the kids, only we have fluctuating housing prices. So if you sold it, let's just say hypothetically today, and you were able to access that to pay for the care that you needed or move into the appropriate, facility or home that you need, then you still have the leftover equity that could then potentially be invested and grow at a similar or sometimes even higher rate of return than what
Right.
the home could have potentially grown at. Fast forward, if your kids inherit that via a beneficiary designation, that does two things. One, it could potentially avoid probate, right? Making it a little bit more simple. And two, could, potentially grow a little bit more for them. Now, we don't know what the housing market's going to do. We don't know what the stock and bond market going to do
Right.
during that exact period of time, but it could.
Yeah.
And it also becomes cash to them. So in some ways, that can be a faster method of them receiving an inheritance while also preventing the kids from, maybe needing to do a little bit of that extra care that it seems as though not many parents want to pass on.
Yeah, and I love what you said there because I think it's that the peace of mind is what you're giving them. So yes, you're not necessarily at that point leaving them with money or with whatever it might be, but the peace of mind for your family is generally a huge deal, and the
Mhm.
kids knowing that their parents are safe and that they're well taken care of, in most cases, probably means more to them than
Absolutely.
anything else. And if you're taken care of down the road, and whatever is left behind at that point, then that's the gift that you gave them. You gave them peace of mind for so many years. And that's a very important, I think, people to think about that. Because
Right.
when you haven't planned that way and then we do hit a crisis mode, generally you're spending more money,
Mhm.
I think, than you would have previously.
Yeah, you didn't have time to plan for it.
Yeah. And then you're just adding, unnecessary stress possibly on your children and in the family.
One other thing I'll add is I'm a huge fan, and I don't see it enough in the industry as a whole, and certainly not in just your everyday conversations, because people tend to be guarded. And there's all sorts of personalities, right?
Hmm.
But really looking at, again, having that conversation with your family. So if it is your kids, if it is your, nieces, nephews, whomever it is, spouses, but have the conversation of, hey, I'm not going to tell you how much money I have, but I am going to tell you these are the plans that we have in place. And your mom, your dad, whoever, and I have spoken about this. Because one of the biggest mistakes we see whenever new clients come to the firm is it's usually an adult child, that sandwich generation
Hmm.
who's trying to help take care of their parents, also maybe helping take care of their kids. And they had no idea that mom or dad had a long-term care plan.
Yes.
And they went and they moved the home into, an irrevocable trust. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing for everyone, but in that instance, if there was enough assets to pay for the long-term care, there was no, possibly not a reason to do that.
Right.
So we just inserted a larger tax bill or, other situation that, I would say all of the things that you hear out there, right? Irrevocable trust, long-term care policies, any of these things, they're simply tools.
Hmm.
If you're going to go hang up a picture and someone hands you an axe, that's probably not the best tool to hang up the picture.
Right.
But if you needed to chop down the tree, it could be a great tool.
Sure.
So I would say having that conversation of, hey, kids, hey, whomever it is that is in the position to help you from a financial and medical standpoint. I want you to know I have this long-term care policy in place. It should meet, 80%, for example, of my needs at a desired facility such as X, right? And then I have additional funds at this point in time to help cover that. And I'm okay with you selling the home because there's no, additional emotional ties. I've already talked to the family about this.
Right.
That just gives the people in decision-making capabilities at that time the power to do what you wanted to have happen. So having those conversations in advance, maybe without those dollar amounts attached to it, can be
Hmm.
really, really critical. So everyone's on the same page, and bring the financial advisor into the conversation. And if the advisor's not having those conversations, ask them to, encourage them to, because that's how everyone's on the same page and how truly your wishes get carried out.
Right. And I was going to ask you too, because, we as advisors and professionals, a lot of times I'm working with attorneys and I'm working with financial advisors, but sometimes the families aren't bringing them all together because they don't understand how all of these professionals, when you're talking about these things, kind of intertwine, and they really do. So
Sure.
how should they, in perfect world, how would, say, that the agent that is looking at the equity and the financial advisor, and if they have an attorney doing those planning paperwork, like how should we work together as a team to support these families? Like what does that scenario look like for somebody?
So I'll give an answer for how our firm and our team works, but I think it can be different and unique for everyone depending on the role that each of those people play. So our firm views ourselves as kind of the quarterback for clients, right? If you need something, we just ask that you run it past us because there's a lot of times that we can say, hey, let's bring all these people in and let's have a conversation together, right? Or let's help support whatever mission it is that you are after, right? If it's selling your home, talking to that agent saying, hey, we bought this home 50 years ago for $20,000. Spouse A has passed away. Spouse B is still alive.
Yeah.
Maybe we are subject to potential taxation
Yep.
upon the sale of that.
Capital
So
gains.
yeah, it matters. And then correlating that in with the attorney, you can't sell a home in an individual name if it's actually titled in a trust. So we need to make sure all of that is together. And sometimes having just one central person can be or team can be very helpful. But when in doubt, say, hey, can we jump on a call or conference call and get everybody on the same page here? And then, if I were going to prioritize that, I would look at it from billable hours. So if your attorney is billing you in 15-minute increments, maybe bring them in on that final call.
Yeah.
Whereas the other folks in your life, maybe you're not billing at that same rate. So
Yeah.
I mean that with a lot of respect to all the attorneys out there. We'll need you guys.
We got to use them economically, right?
100%.
Yeah, and I do think that is important that we all get together and talk because, when the right hand doesn't understand what the left hand is doing, or if there's strategies that could be put into place that we're not talking about at the end of the day, we're all at the same goal. We all have the same goal to support our client, to get them the best prepared for the future as we can. So having those conversations together, I think, is probably the best way for anybody to approach those situations. So when we're talking about, again, moving forward again, we're looking at this, maybe the 80 plus population. And, once they're decided, okay, it's time, I am going to move into a community, and they sell that home. I always tell them a lot of times, I have a lady right now, for example, that she has been holding her money in a savings account because she's worried. Everybody's worried about what the stock market is doing and losing and outliving their funds. That's a big concern right now. So I always say, make sure your money is working for you. Money is only as good as what money can do, right? And they're living in these communities that are increasing, let's say 5 to 7% every year as far as their rent rate. So I always say, make sure you're putting the equity in the home into an account that's going to grow for you and work for you so that you don't have to worry about that increase of living cost. So that population, like, what would you say to them at this point in life when we're making that decision? I always tell them, I joke, don't go put it in a box and hide it under your mattress.
That's true.
We need to do something that's going to work. What is a safe way or the best way for them to think about utilizing those funds to make sure that it's supporting them into that next chapter?
So I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to back up a little bit.
Okay.
First one is going to be when you're looking to go and sell the home. A lot of times, at that age point, people are realizing that their homes are very dated, to your point earlier.
Yes.
So having that conversation with a realtor who's familiar with your area on what makes the most sense. Are you really going to get a lot more bang for your buck by doing the renovations that you feel are important versus just selling the home? And then also backing that into your timeline of needs, right?
Yeah.
So if it's going to take you, months to do a kitchen renovation and you need the equity in your home to be able to make a smooth transition into, wherever your next step is, you need to weigh that.
Right. Because we can't guarantee that they're going to get that back dollar for dollar.
Sure.
Especially when it's an immediate flip, as we say. Like if you're going to do it and you're going to live in that house another 7 to 10 years,
sure.
Yeah, you're probably going to see some return on that. But I'm always one, I will never tell my clients they need to remodel anything. The biggest bang for your buck is always carpet and paint. Those are the two big things, but absolutely those types of things just don't make sense. It's added time, it's added stress, and it's money that they may not need to be spending at that point.
Well, and it all depends on, their situation. And that's where it's so important to have a professional, like yourself or wherever it is that they're needing to go, right? To be able to give that guidance. Because as financial advisors, what we're looking at is, if you took this money out of your IRA or your brokerage account, it's going to cost you X, which is a lot of times more, right? Especially if it's from an IRA and you have to pay, ordinary income tax on those distributions. So is it worth it? Where's your cost benefit, right? Where's that crossover point? So that's point A. Then fast forward, kind of going into transitioning, right? Taking that money and ensuring that you have a plan. And our team and our firm really likes to break this into, to put it simply, 3 buckets. Okay. Now, can it be more complex than that? 100%. But 3 buckets. We've got our short-term bucket. That's what you need in the first 1 to 3 years. That needs to be, by and large, safe, secure money. That does not mean a box under your mattress, right? But you can take more risk-off approach. And risk-off approach meaning what matches your A, risk tolerance, and B, needs, right? If you only have $100,000 to your name and you need all $100,000 of that in a 1-year time frame, you might have an extremely high risk tolerance, but that doesn't back into your needs, right? We can't handle significant market volatility with 100% of your assets.
Right.
Right. Now, let's say you have substantial, then again, we break that into those 3 buckets. We've got kind of the risk off, right, or low risk for the 1 to 3 year need bucket. Then we've got kind of our intermediate term where we can take on a little bit more risk. And then we've got the longer term. And then effectively, we look at, knowing market cycles are typically 5 years. On average, 2 out of every 5 years are bear markets or negative years. Now, there is no RSVP of like it's going to be exactly 2020 through 2025, 2025 through 2030, right?
Right.
We don't have that exact knowledge. But when markets are high, that's a great time to kind of shave some winnings off, right? Whenever markets are low, if you don't need to take that additional distribution because it's just purely optional, maybe don't, maybe wait, right? And then always look at rebalancing and, tax loss harvesting and a handful of other tools that, again, your advisory team can help you do to create most efficiency. I know my clients might think that I'm a little bit crazy, but I personally love down markets. I think that they're great because it's a point to reposition and to reallocate, especially that more risky money, because our risk off money is, generally pretty safe. It might sustain some dips, and some moves, but by and large, we know we're okay for the next at least 3 years. And if you have a more conservative person, then you can even take that up to 5 years. But at that point, you're able to truly leverage and position for the next up market that we know will come at some point. We just don't, again, have that RSVP date. S&P 500 didn't call me yesterday and say, hey, here's our day. Here's our time.
We don't have our crystal ball.
Oh, no. We just need tomorrow's newspaper one time, right?
But it's all about, like you said, kind of riding the waves and preparing and putting those little pieces in place for when the market goes ups and downs. So I think that's a really great strategy. And, they need to have, I think they're always scared, but having those conversations and giving them that knowledge and just empowerment of, this is how we manage this to kind of take the fear out.
Yeah.
Is always a needed topic to have with this population. So, well, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about this. I think it's really important and a lot of great information shared. And if anybody wanted to get a hold of you to talk to you, or maybe they had some questions or seeking some advice, what's the best way they could reach you?
Our number locally is 502-753-0609. And then my email address is J as in Jennifer, Hulesman. No one can spell that. So HUELSMAN at CerityPartners.com. Of course, you can always go to our website as well. Check out more information. It is CerityPartners.com with a C, CERITY.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's fun. Thanks.